Heal Your Shit is a podcast for anyone curious about why life throws us curveballs. We're all about digging into the connections between mind, body, and soul, but we keep it real. Because, let's be honest, being human can be one wild ride. Once you understand your shit, healing it becomes a whole lot easier. Hi, welcome to Heal Your Shit podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Laura.
And I'm Ulof. So for me, I went to a space in my life where it was so much suffering that I just couldn't bear with it. So I basically had to choose between becoming a bitter old man or start healing my shit. So for me, that path went through a lot of different modalities, but what I work mostly with today is de-armoring and IFS and inner child healing in different ways. So I have sessions with couples or individual sessions, and I also hold workshops.
And I'm Laura, and I started this journey, I guess, because of my depression, and I worked through it. And thanks to that, I have a lot of insight. I became a coach, a trauma-informed coach. So I help people to spot traumas in their life and work deeper elsewhere, maybe during de-armoring with you. So that's me. Welcome to our show.
Go.
Welcome to our next episode. And today we're going to talk about seasonality and the changes that life brings with different seasons.
For all of us.
Right.
And now it's the time of the autumn. And it's a time of the period, it gets darker and darker. And even though we might, feel charged from the summer and the energy of the summer, the light, sun, the warmth, we still move into a period of letting go of the leaves falling from the trees and just, as they say, so as without, so within, or the other way around, we're all interconnected with everything around. So it's also time for us to move within.
Inwards.
Yes.
Right? And I think it might be quite hard for people in general to move between these seasons, which are the seasons of the year. And we're going to talk about different kind of seasons, right? But it might be difficult because you're coming from, as you said, from a summer that's really energetic, full of life and sun. And, you're out there connecting with people. And there's this really high energy and nice vibe. Yeah. And then you're coming to the fall, which is really like, okay, it's over. Right? Like, in a way, it is over. And especially when you live in Scandinavian countries, like, the summer is really that social life, that time of connecting. And autumn, like, nobody connects really as much.
Yeah.
It's a transition.
And I think it's important to connect it to the environment. Like, for all of us, we feel like it's so easy to be outside in the summer. And also, of course, in the early autumn, but, the further it moves into the darkness and the ground gets more and more wet and cold, the harder it is, at least I feel, to connect with earth, connect with the trees. The leaves are falling.
It's very, heavy and damp in a way, right?
Yeah.
So I think in that way, but also, let's say it's autumn. So the main topic is letting go. What do I let go in my life right now? What am I going through? Is there something that's not good for me anymore? Even asking yourself these questions, I think it's a good start for a new season, right?
Yes. And for me, it's the transition can be quite rough sometimes. I felt a lot of resistance, at the start of it's still start of autumn, but yeah. I felt some, procrastination, some overeating, just like, I don't want to, I don't want to go into this. I want to stay in the high vibe of the summer.
Right.
But it's also this period of moving indoors, but also to connect maybe in a more softer way or
Yeah, I understand that. That's, if we just talk about the season, like the autumn, so what brings me comfort in that transition is okay, how can I make it softer? And for me, it's like, for example, I just light up candles a lot, and nice, maybe smell of like burn fire or something. Burn fire, ciao. Burned wood.
Yeah.
Like the apples and apple pie, like all
Yeah.
those soft and nice and warm things that bring you the color red. Like I'm like, now I'm in the season, I'm like buying red stuff, red clothes, because red because it brings me this warmth. That's what we kind of also need in that season, I feel.
Exactly. And like the closeness, like the human, like the touch
Touch.
or massage or hugs. So it's like the warmth that was once outside now needs to, move inside
Right.
closer.
Oh, I feel it so much. Like
Yeah.
I feel like in my hugging season, like everyone I meet, I'm like, can I get a hug? Give me a free hug.
And to reflect upon this, because if we don't, we tend to just like maybe stay in the mind or just keep on doing the same things or running in the same loops. And then we get very, very tired or sick because, autumn is connected to the lungs and to grief. The
Right.
lungs, cold. A lot of people get colds.
Yeah,
and that
it's a lot right now.
forces you to stay, or
So there it is. So like if you get a cold, that's also a sign like you should stay inside.
Yeah.
Take care of yourself, embrace yourself, right?
Because, if you're in the air energy too much in your mind, too much in the running, then you get,
Right.
colds. So,
Yeah. But then comes winter, and that's like rest,
yes.
right? Recharge. Like it's even more, like I feel like even more stay inside, rest. You need to do that, because if we look at the animals, many of them
Hibernate.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly. That's
sorry.
my point. So I'm like, that's what the season's telling you. And it's the same with like food you're eating, right? So
Yeah.
in the summer we eat a lot of fruit, like a salad,
yeah.
right? And now it's the time of pumpkins and
Exactly.
everything that's like a little bit
Like
cinnamon,
soups and
spices
yeah,
that
exactly.
give the warmth, and the winter even more, I think. And then you go back to spring when there's this freshness, this fresh energy, and the same on your plate. So it's kind of crazy how it shows in the very small things, like
Yeah.
the colors you're gonna pick, the food that you're gonna eat, the way you're gonna relate to people, right?
Exactly.
That's interesting.
It's very interesting because it's also, if we're not attuned to this, I mean, the seasonality, the seasons around us, or when there is time to maybe let go of a relationship, let go of a job, or, move to a different house.
Right.
We need to be attuned to what's actually happening in the body. And not just get locked into our mind. But I've lived in this house for 20 years. I'm just gonna stay here. Or I've been to the relationship where I invested so much in this relationship, but maybe it's time to actually ponder, like, there might be a transition in the relationship.
Right. Doesn't have to be like it's over.
No,
right?
It could be a transition. And because all of us, tend to hold on to and cling to safety and to things that are similar, and we want to lean on things. But if we lean too much, we sort of tend to destroy those things a little bit. Or
right. Yeah, like I think like being clingy and leaning too much is not good, but also like being in that comfort zone, that's also like important part of this season. Like,
Yeah.
You need to feel comfortable. You need to feel, and whatever doesn't make you feel comfortable, that might need to be let go. And that's I think another chapter, like letting go of things that don't serve us, letting go of people that do not serve us. And that also requires some very deep insight, like, what do I need? Who am I? And where am I on my journey? Because we're not talking only about seasons, but like, we have a journey, which is life.
Yeah.
And you go for different stages. And it's like, is this, for this stage of my life, really relevant to me? Does this give me something good?
Yeah.
Right?
That's good food for thoughts, because it's also, in a way, in the depth of our being, we need to find the home there also. But then feel into what do I surround myself with, what people, what nourishment, what do I give myself, what food do I intake, how do I spend my days, where are my, all of those things.
And I think you need to be very selective. And I feel sometimes people forget about it and are there for everyone and everywhere and want to do like so much, which is not really a solution. Like you really need to focus your energy. And I'm not saying like limits to, a certain circle of people, but like choose what's good for you, and don't choose to be everything everywhere, because the seasonality of life says, no, like, listen, this is the focus for now. This is your phase.
Yeah.
Like if it's the phase to build a family, that's going to be your focus. You're not going to be out there super socializing and doing tons of things, because then you cannot really focus on building a family, for example, right?
No, and I mean, also for all of us, we have learnings in this life. And like in the example that you gave, that you're out there pleasing everybody else, maybe at one point in your life, it comes sort of like a portal, or you have to be yourself, that you please everybody and, everywhere. And no matter how much you please, you keep getting rejected because that's what you're afraid of. But then it comes to a point where you sort of see that so clearly. Like if I can't do this anymore because it doesn't give me the comfort or the safety that I'm looking for anyways. And that's where you get to a choice point. So that's so important, because we need to realize I have this tendency, I have this, and that comes to changes as well. Like we tend to hold on to relationships, we tend to hold on to maybe job situation
or ways of doing things,
or ways of doing habits, but then it generally have to become a little bit too destructive for us to actually make the change. And if we can be more subtly attuned to that, then I think we can have smoother transitions.
Yeah, and I think it's all about that kind of resistance, because you might feel on a very basic level that, oh, this is the focus of this season for me, right? Like I want to, I don't know, travel around the world, and this is like for the next 10 years or next 5 years, this is my focus. That's the season of my life.
Yeah.
Collecting these memories and experiences. But when you start to see like, okay, now I'm shifting. My focus is now I want to build a family. So we gave this example before. Then you cannot go on with all the things that you were doing before and step into that and not trying to cling to that. Like I'm going to still live that life. Yeah. It's not going to work. So that transition must be, as you said, like, going through those, going for acceptance, actually. Like, okay, this is not going to serve me anymore. I'm going to go into that mode. And this is the new season of my life. Yeah. And I think people really don't want to let it go because that's familiar.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
And to see, we also go into denial, or you have to overly explain yourself or justify your choices.
Yeah.
Because then you see the energy is moving up into the head, and it's like, well, I do this for my kid's future, whatever, And it's like,
are you?
Is that really right? Are you connected with your body, your truth? Or is it just an old program running? That's in the end just going to make you miserable.
Right. And I think we talked about it in the other episode about also being aware that when you're in your 40s and your 50s and in your 30s, you're going to do different things. You're going to have different capabilities. Your body's going to be different. And you have to also adjust to that. That's also seasonality of life, right?
Yeah, of course. Of course.
And you cannot resist that and say, no, I'm going to be 50 and I'm going to be as active as in my 20s.
Yeah, some people, they do that. But it's always also about why and what's my motivation? Because sometimes you have a commitment to something, and a commitment can be beautiful, but it could also be, okay, that was a commitment I made 30 years ago. Maybe I need to shift the focus of my commitment.
Right.
So it's all this dance.
Right. I think we need to think about values in the same way, because there's I feel that there's seasonality to that. In that part of your life, you might value freedom and this and this and that. And the other part of your life, when you shift focus, I want to do something else, you're not going to value it as much as other things like closeness, building solid relationships, and so on and so on. So it's also about being aware, like, what's my value system right now? Because that changes. And I feel like they cling to their old value systems and don't see that, okay, my life is shifting. Well, maybe I should look at my values. Is it still the same? Oh, perhaps not. And maybe I should just
and I mean, change is uncomfortable for all of us. And it's also about, if you are uncomfortable in feeling uncomfortable, you're probably stuck in a survival strategy. So it's also so important to, attune to this feeling of, I feel a bit uncertain, unsafe, it feels a bit scary, and, to hold those parts that we've been speaking about a little bit earlier. And because otherwise it's just like either we just push ahead and we keep fighting and we're not listening, or we just totally collapse and give up. And we need to find that middle ground, that connected. It's like, okay, I feel sensitive, I feel a bit emotional. How do I navigate this? Can I also create supportive structures for myself? Can I, light some candles? Like, what fills me up with energy? Or can I be in close contact with a friend or get supported? Because, it's so easy, especially for men, to withdraw and then I'm just going to be alone and figure this out. And that's not maybe sometimes, but not, always have that as a go-to. At least for me, it's like, okay, I need to actually reach out and like, I'm going through this. Right. Can you be there with me and listen or hold space for me? Yeah.
But also, like you just mentioned, for men, and I think the seasonality for women, we have even more layers into that.
Yes.
As we spoke about it, that we women live in different phases, and it's connected to the moon, it's connected to our periods, and so on. And like we live that death every month, that we are living it now in autumn, when letting go and so on. So I feel like there are even more layers to that for women than for men. So maybe we are kind of used to being into that seasonality mode, because our bodies are so much compared to men's body, right?
Yeah, and often a lot, women have a lot of more of the emotional and a lot of also like the talking, the communicating all the time that men can get sort of overwhelmed with. And they sort of go into the phase like, okay, I'm just going to please my woman. But then they also lose themselves and the women feel it. It's like, where are you? It might be comfortable for a week or a month or something, but in the end, it's just going to be like, okay, who are you?
Right.
What are you doing?
And I think for many men right now, it's also like a challenge. Like, you have to actually figure out yourself. We women in that way are aware of what we want, where we want to go, and like what we expect. And many men are struggling with, oh, I want this, but then I'm like, I don't know if I'm ready for it. And I'm like, it's very hard for men to get access to what's happening.
Yeah. And I think more men are in like suppression and denial.
Right.
Because that's also the coping strategy of just like keeping it together, being a man, don't feel too much. But then what you lose is the closeness of relating. And the openness in relating, because if you feel like I'm not open, or you're like, okay, there's a distance between us that I can't explain, and many couples, that turns into a frustration because the woman wants communication and closeness, and the man is like, I need to be on guard because I don't feel safe in my emotions.
Right, and this is like a perfect moment now, like if we talk about seasonality, for men to also feel into that. So that's why we were talking about it, because like it's not just for us women because we go through it every month, as I said, but like also for you guys to just feel like, okay, this is the situation outside. This is how it feels. This is a perfect time to sit down with yourself and actually figure it out, I think, right?
Yeah, and with brothers or sisters. That's why I do my workshop, for men to find the supportive structure, to allow ourselves to express our strengths and vulnerabilities, to be seen and to be witnessed by each other. Beautiful. Instead of, going to alcohol or just talking about babes or sports car or, soccer or whatever, we actually come home and talk to what matters, our grief or sorrow.
I think it's so important, the lecture you're doing with men's group and so on. I wish like many guys would come to you and actually feel that connection, because that's what they don't feel nowadays. And it's hard.
Yeah, it is.
How can you go through all these seasons of life when you don't have that support on a deep level? Because we're not talking about exactly like going and meeting up with your friends and having a beer and talking about football. Well, that's like a surface level, right?
Yeah, and
which is needed sometimes.
Yeah, and a lot of men get just stuck in that. I mean, there's also different archetypes in our lives, as a child, and then the child comes into a teenager, and that,
right.
I think we also talk about that.
Yes.
The warrior archetype, and, go into the world feeling the strength and the power. But then that needs to be, sort of relaxed, because you can't fight all your life.
No.
You need to acquire the wisdom of the world that you're encountering.
That you can become a king.
Eventually.
Eventually.
Then after that, maybe a sage or something. I don't know.
Which is a beautiful role to be in.
Yeah.
And also like embracing that. Like you're shifting the roles through your life.
Yeah.
And being okay with that, because many times I feel people are not okay with, I want to be a king for the rest of my life. But instead, at some point, you're going to be like the one who holds wisdom for others. And it's beautiful. And like accepting that, embracing that.
Yeah. And also then to allow the feelings of nostalgia surfacing. Like, I don't have a small child anymore that needs me in the way that he used to. And it's like, that's, it was so sweet and such a gift, but it's something else. And there's new gifts in this. That means more freedom, for example, right. More time. Okay, so how do I use that? Right. So, allow that to sort of simmer down, and like the leaves that falls from the trees, and you watch that and you feel into that. And from that space, you navigate or you take decisions. But it's really about, allowing the leaves to sort of fall in its own time.
Yeah, and also that connects in my brain, at least, to grief.
Yeah.
And it might be very subtle grief. It might be a grief of losing someone, but also like of letting go. And I think that's the thing we need to master as humans, letting go. And I've experienced that recently twice of letting go people who are... who don't want me or who do not serve me and who cannot meet me at the same level I can meet them. Yeah. And it's hard. It's hard as hell, because you go out there with love in your heart and like embracing people as they are. Yeah. But not everyone is ready for you. And sometimes we just need to let it go and be okay with it. And as I think it's like an exercise. It's like exercising your muscle. And when you do that certain amount of times, you become a master of letting go. It's more easy. It gets easy, I swear.
Yeah, you get more clear, and you pick up the signals. Right. And that's the learnings of life. It's like, okay, I need to try this taste, but then it's like, maybe that wasn't for me. Or maybe it was just like a learning that redirected me a little bit.
Right. And I think... Yeah, and I think we all need to master that, because that's what you said at the beginning of this episode, that, people cling, like in the relationships, they end, and the jobs, they end, you go into something else. And us being stuck in the past, that's like a really hard thing to overcome when you don't want to. I think the most important thing in that state, when you're letting go somebody, and just to feel like the pain of it, like, okay, it hurts. Yeah. It's not pretty. It's not nice. And you might cry, you might feel overwhelmed and so on. And that's fine. Feel into it, because when we don't feel it fully, then it's going to come back as like this, what if? And,
Yeah, and it's like a grief circle. It has its time. If you lost somebody, allow yourself to grieve them. Allow yourself to do that work. Grieving is, a process of work.
Right.
Because if you don't, maybe I think it's hard to then let new things into life,
Right.
because it's like this unresolved energy that's stuck in the body.
Lingering.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's like if you keep that door a little bit open and say like, oh, but I wish this would work out and so on, then it's kind of, as you said, like you cannot attract the things that are actually good for you, the people that are gonna bring something to your life and they're gonna want to be in your life, because that's also another part.
Yeah, and you might even, try to fake it and look happy, but people feel like there's something off here, some energetic weirdness going on.
Yeah.
And so we can't really fake our processes. We really need
But
to
we
do
try so hard.
Yeah.
We're so good at it. I mean, look at Instagram. People posting their pictures and they're super happy and everything's perfect. No, it's fucking not perfect. Let's face it.
Yeah, and many people that are actually depressed say, "No, I'm fine. Everything is good." I think it's time to be more honest with ourselves and with each other also.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going through this period, or there's something in my stomach. I have a knot in my stomach.
Right.
There's something going on, and just starting to allow ourselves to give us time to like either just sit quiet and feel like a meditation, or because we keep running, and the running is because we just don't want to feel. We just want to run around.
Yeah, it's hard to face things and sit down and feel into your pain, feel into that loss, feel into not being good enough, because that's the feeling that comes up probably when you have to let go, or you've been let go. So it's not an easy process, but you really need to sit down and be in that, be uncomfortable a little bit. And then what I said today to my friend, because she's also going through something, I said like, it came, it's gonna go, and you're gonna move on, and it's gonna be like everything else in your life. There's been shitloads of things in your life, and you've just moved on through it.
Yeah.
And that you're gonna be fine. And that's like also like trying to tell yourself, this is not the end of my life, this is not it. Like, it's okay, it happened, it hurts like crazy, but there's something new ahead. There's a light at the end of this tunnel,
Exactly. It's just like being born,
Yeah.
There's more and more pressure building up.
Right.
And I think we're in that period right now. It's getting darker and darker.
Yeah.
So it gets like more and more uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then it's winter, and then it's like, oh, super uncomfortable. But then spring comes, and we sort of start a journey to be reborn again.
Reborn. That's a good word. But I'm thinking also, because of the questions I got, like, how can we spot that we're entering this other season of our lives? I think it's a hard question.
Yeah.
Because it's so subtle. I think sometimes, as you said before to me, we were talking about it before the podcast, like sometimes there are small messages from the universe, sometimes there are small things happening in us, and if we don't pay attention to that, then we're gonna get like a slap in our face.
Yeah, and I think one thing that comes to me is like when we're going through the movements, just doing repetitively, like we're going to work and we're not really appreciated. It doesn't fill us with aliveness. It doesn't fill us with, inspiration, or like, it's just like, okay, I need to do this work because of that, or I'm just in the relationship because of that.
Right.
Then it becomes so mental, and it becomes so solidified in the mind. It's like, okay, do I really need to be in this work, or do I need to, maybe change the relationship I have with my work or with my partner, or start exploring new aspects of it?
So whenever we feel like we're on autopilot,
yeah, I would say, yeah.
So that's maybe one thing to spot, like, am I on an autopilot? Am I doing something because that's how I've been doing it for 10 years? Relationship-wise, work-wise, I don't know, like how you do things every day, like how you eat, how you take care of your body, right?
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes there's a lot going on in our lives. So you might be in one phase, like you might be at work on autopilot because you're going through a big change in your relationship.
And that's okay.
Yeah, so that's okay. I mean,
you need some kind of stability where
Exactly.
something is repetitive. There's a comfort zone in your life.
Exactly,
So
yeah.
not everything's gonna, tilt up and
Overwhelming,
down,
yeah,
overwhelming, as you said.
exactly.
Yeah. So that would be one thing, I think. But the second is also like feeling that something is not good, something is wrong. I don't know what, like kind of like this intuitive feeling of something is not working, but I don't know really. I cannot put my finger on it.
Yeah, the body, gives us signals and cues, so really just really need to be aware of, like, tune into what's going on. And there's a part of us that has a resistance, and it's like, okay, what is the resistance, against
Right.
what's calling me here?
So like you could kind of sit down and just do a few breaths and try to feel in your body, even if you're not into meditation or, breath work, but like just very slow breathing through your nose towards your belly and, just trying to feel what comes up.
Yeah, there's some good meditation exercises actually in that, like 12-fold belly breathing, like you go deep into breathing into the belly, because often when we in those situations, what we do is we go into our head overly, and we try to analyze every part of it. And I mean, that's one way of doing it that could also be helpful, that you actually see the situation, you put it down on a piece of paper, what works, what doesn't work. But then you also need to ask that deeper wisdom of the body, like, what does this guidance give me?
Right.
What am I missing? Maybe it's a learning process that I actually need to move forward in that working process. Maybe I have a boss that keep demanding and demanding, and I'm afraid to put boundaries. Well, then that's the learning that you need to go through. And, putting those boundaries can be super scary. And that could even mean that maybe lose your job and go through one of those processes. But often I find when we do that, we get so much more energized, because we pass through those limited beliefs that keeps holding us back in our lives.
Right. Yeah. And also, like, as you said, I think that's really important that on the intellectual level, like on the mind level, we can figure it out, like, and have pros and cons and, write it down. And that's a good starting point for sure. But it's never the whole truth, because we're more than that. We're more than just our brain. There's like emotional body. There's like spiritual body, like you're so complex. And maybe on paper, this job is great, this partner is great, but on the spiritual level, like, we cannot grow together. Like I cannot see any connection. Or on your emotional level, you feel like your needs are not met.
Yeah.
Basically. So like, like on paper it can look pretty good, but there's still this feeling of something is off. So then you have to look into other parts of you, and not just to like, okay, this is good. Good job, good pay.
That takes a lot of courage, and it takes time.
Yeah.
So we need to give ourselves that time, and to learn to, comfort ourselves, not just by eating a lot, or by actually holding space for those parts of ourselves that's not feel seen also.
Yeah, absolutely. So like embracing that, and it's also like it's okay to not feel okay. That's like main message. Like it's okay to feel a little bit down because the weather is not as good as it was, and it's okay to feel that I'm sad because I'm letting go something, or like I can feel that it's gonna be soon that we will need to let go of that, right?
Yeah, and sometimes we just have a shitty day. You just wake up, you don't feel motivated doing anything, and we still have to navigate through that. And sometimes you maybe choose to go to work or anyways, but sometimes it's like it's all these subtleties that can be so challenging, and because we can have a tendency to force ourselves too much. But then when we do those changes, maybe we need to like go, the pendulum swings in the opposite direction. And then we get sort of loose and we just collapse. So it's all about trying to find that rhythm.
Yeah. And I think it's like you said, But sometimes it's good to let everything go, like just fuck it all, and I'm gonna rest because this is too much. Like yesterday, I had really difficult, tough day, and I still went to work, and I still like. And actually, I was happy to go there, even despite my discomfort, emotional discomfort. That I connected with some people. I had really good talks, and that kind of helped me to move on through the day. Whereas when I would stay at home and work from home, could be kind of I could get stuck also into that, like, you know, spiraling into the negativity of the day. So sometimes it's good to push yourself a little bit, and sometimes it's good to say, okay, this is it today.
And see what tendencies you have, and to sort of
withdraw.
Exactly. Help yourself to, okay, I know I have the safety in withdrawal, but I still need to connect. I still need to reach out. Okay, let's do it.
Yeah. I feel like we're getting to the end of this episode, but do you want to say something else, or there's something missing about the seasonality of life, of the year, of the month, you know, to summarize this? Or
well, probably it's the gift of seasonality. You know, that without these leaves dropping, we wouldn't appreciate when they come out in the spring and the birds start singing again. And I mean, it's hard for all of us to go through this winter in Scandinavia, but it's also the beauty of the rebirth, and to actually attune to that shift, because for some of us, it gets too painful. So it's like, I'm just going to work and not think about that, but to actually allow ourselves to be in nature and to feel it in our bodies, feel it in our surroundings. Yeah, that's that.
I love it. So yeah, there's no light without darkness, kind of the contrast of it, and like allow it, observe it, feel into it, and, you know, be okay with whatever comes to you. Like, emotions come and go.
Yeah, and it's time to, you know, find that inner flickering light within.
So embrace it.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, all of you. And if you like this, don't forget to subscribe and click that like button.
Yeah. And share it with your friends.
Please do.
Thank you. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you.